Okay, so let's break this code down line by line and understand exactly what's going on. This is what we call in WordPress development the loop. Okay, and if you were to do a Google search for WordPress space the loop, spelled that wrong, so the loop, you'd find there's tons of resources about it, and I recommend that if you really want to pick up the nuances of understanding how this concept works, you should read some of these articles from the WordPress documentation. They do a really good job of kind of going in and explaining all the different nuances involved. But let's go ahead and break it down so that we can understand this idea on a basic level. So what you have here are a couple of things that are happening from the PHP language itself. So this would work in any situation, not even just WordPress. The first thing you have here is an if statement. So this is the opening part of the if statement. This is the closing part. So this is just general PHP at this point. Okay, so what's happening with this if statement, as you can see with this if keyword, when I use that in PHP, what it does is it checks inside the parentheses. So anything inside of this closing parentheses and this opening parentheses, PHP is going to check and see if whatever is in here is true. And in this case, this is a function. Okay, and it's going to check to see if this computes to either true or false. It's going to compute to one or the other. So this have posts method, this comes from WordPress. And again, you can just kind of search Google and say WordPress have underscore posts and look up that particular function to see what it's talking about, and you'll find results about it. Let me take those parentheses out. There you go. If you just search it like that, WordPress have underscore posts, you can read about exactly what those things do. But all we care about right now is that it generates either true or false. Okay? And so if it generates as true, if this computes to be true, then anything inside this if block, which in this case is this code right here, lines 3 through 7, this stuff will actually get computed and interpreted by PHP. If this were to compute as false, then PHP would skip anything inside of the if block. It wouldn't do any of this code. It would just find the next place where it says end if and just move on from there. So it would just skip all this code altogether. Okay? Now, this have posts function is a function that basically checks in the database to see, okay, are there any blog posts? Okay, so my server is running. Make sure your server is running. Okay, you can see here it says stop. That means it's running. And if I go to my admin area and we click on this post section, you can see, okay, there is one post in here. So that's what that function is referring to. It's saying, okay, are there any posts in your post section of the admin area? You can check in here. But this is, again, this is just an interface up on top of our database, okay? So the admin area is no different from the front end of our site. This is just an interface that's kind of looking into our database, and we can see inside the database that there is a post here. It's got a title, it's got content, and it's got published date, those kinds of things. So this is computing to true. Have posts is checking to see in the database, are there any blog posts? In this case, there is one. So this if block is going to compute the code inside, which is this stuff. So that's step one, the if statement. Step two is this other PHP keyword called while. And most programming languages have this. These are called loops. This is an idea called looping. Okay, and that's why this entire convention falls under the WordPress idea of the loop. And what it's doing is it's saying, okay, while this condition is true, which is have post, that means while there are posts in there, go through each post, that's what this is saying, and then go ahead and output something, do something in here. In this case, this line right here, the content, is going to pull out whatever is inside the content box of this post. Okay, so anything in this big box right here when you're in the post section is the content section. anything in this kind of more slim box right here, this is the title. So we can do that. So right now with the content, if I go over here to our front page, you can see it's just pulling out the stuff from this big box here. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see this clearer. Now, if I wanted to display the title, I could also do that, but I have to do it inside of this while loop. Notice this is the opening part of the while loop, and this is the closing part of the while loop. So if I want to show something else from this post, I can do it like this. I can say, I'm going to add a new line, add our PHP tags, and in here I'm going to say the title, and add the semicolon, and then close that PHP tag. So if I save that, and remember, you need to pause your screen if you want to follow along and type this. If I save that, Command S to save on a Mac, Control S on Windows, and then I go back here and refresh the page, there, now the title is showing up from here, from this admin section. This title is now showing up. Okay, so let's go over here now to our admin section and add a new post. We can click this add new button, or you can click it here, it doesn't matter. We're going to add a new post, and we're going to give it a title. We'll just say second blog post. That's our title. And we'll just capitalize this for the heck of it. And then we'll say this is the content for our second post right here in this smaller box. So I'm going to hit this publish button here, and now it's live. This content is stored in our database. The moment I hit that publish button, it has been stored in our database. And now if I go back here and refresh, watch what happens. There we go. Chronologically, it's now displaying both of them. So why is that happening? Let's look at our code. The reason why is this loop. This keyword while, this works in any PHP setting. It's not just related to WordPress. When I do this while and I have this condition here, and then I have this right over here, what I'm saying is while this is true, in this case it is true, there are posts in our database. That's what have posts checks for. While that's true, for each post, that's what this is saying, for each one of them, do the following. So for the first post, grab its title and content, and then loop through again, loop into the database, and check, okay, is there another post in there? There is. For that post, do the following. Okay, so just to illustrate this further, I'm going to add another line in here. I'm just going to add an H2 heading. Okay, and Cloud9 just inserts the closing HTML tag for me. So this is just raw HTML. This isn't PHP. I'm going to say a single blog post and save that. Now if I go back over here and refresh, there, you're seeing it looping. You see what's happening is that it's going into the database, this while structure, this entire block of code is doing this. It's going into the database, checking to see if there are blog posts, and then for each post, that's what this line right here says, this little statement, it's saying, for each post, output this line, compute this, and compute this. And that's why you're seeing it repeating. It's outputting that line, that's hard-coded HTML, then it's dynamically grabbing this and dynamically grabbing that from the database. Again, this is hard-coded, dynamic, and dynamic. And you can see that here. This is just HTML. There's no PHP magic happening in this line of code. Okay, this isn't reaching into the database. These are functions used by PHP. So these are reaching into the database and pulling out the title and the content. So how did I know to use the title and the content? Again, these are the things you learn over time, and that's why I'm doing this tutorial, is to show you the main kinds of functions that PHP comes with. These are called template tags, and PHP is full of these kinds of functions, and the only way you can really learn about them is through tutorials like this, or you can go on your own and kind of read about them by just searching them. So the title, if I search WordPress and then the_title, you'll see I keep coming back to this website, codex.wordpress.org, and it's got information about this function. Now, documentation is very important when you're a developer to read. You want to read this stuff, and you really want to understand it, but when you're new, it can be really daunting, and that's why I've created this series to kind of help you get your feet wet. Another popular site you'll see is developer.wordpress.org. And this also kind of goes into detail about each of these functions. So there's an entire reference of functions that you can kind of explore. You know, and you got to just kind of take the time to go through them and see them. But we'll go through all of the main ones in this series. So there you go. This is how it works. This is called the loop, this entire structure here. We have an if statement, just to review, that's saying, okay, if this is true, if there are posts in the database, we do the code in here. If it's false, if there are no posts in the database, we're going to skip this. We're not going to loop through. We're not going to show anything. Okay? And then if this is true, which in our case it is, let's loop through here and go through the database and go through each post and then do the following. Display this, and display this. Okay, so I'm going to save this for now and we'll go on from here.